You say you're fine, but I can see right through. You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. No, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lions, lions. We'll be running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We'll be running with the lions, lions.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Gloves Off. And I'm so happy and excited to see you guys. Today I have my guest, Rebecca Kallaus, who is from Business Done Better, and she is a female entrepreneur, someone that's very close to my heart. We've gotten to know each other through business and then eventually become friends, which tends to happen with me a lot. And she is one of these people who, really understands business strategy. And what I love about her mission and her purpose is the fact that she wants to do business with integrity. And I feel like that's something that's really missing right now in the world today. So I'm actually going to let her take the stage and talk a little bit about herself. So Rebecca, so glad to have you here today.
It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course, of course. Well, I want you to share with our audience today just a little bit more about you and, just like why you're doing this, just what inspires you and your mission. And then we can dive into some great conversation. Okay. So I'm gonna let you have the spotlight, and I'm going to let you have the stage all to yourself.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's so Business Done Better. People are always like, they want to start a business, but I'm always like, well, what's your why? If you don't have a strong enough why, that's what really carries you in starting your own business. So for me, Business Done Better is really an essence of my core and what I want to give back to the world. I started my first company on technically $250 and homeless is how my journey as being an entrepreneur started. So it's been a long journey since then. And it's been a real dream come true to actually bring Business Done Better to life, to have a full team behind me, being able to fulfill on all the amazing things that we do for our clients. I think it was actually you who you were showing off some asset for your business. And I was like, oh, that looks really great. You're like, yeah, your team did. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah, we did a great job. So it's fun to just, have things be growing to really a dream come true kind of a state. And where my team is so amazing that I can be hands off to a certain degree for fulfillment for some of our clients, which is, kind of every business owner's dream. But but a whole why behind it is that when you're starting a business, there's not enough resources or there's a lot of resources to start your own business, but it's overwhelming. There's not one place to really go to where you can trust for all your business essentials. And so that's something that I wanted to create Business Done Better for. It's a place that people can trust for anything that they need. So we have Business in a Box, which provides all the essentials for business owners in a very fluid package. So it's kind of the short summary.
One of the things that I wanted to share from my own personal experience. So I met you because I was struggling because I had a business and I've always had businesses, but this was the business that I didn't want any employees. So I know that when we first met, that's what I said. I'm like, I want a business, but I don't want employees. Been there, done that. So, how can you help me? And I had been through several virtual assistants. Everybody was like, oh, you should use a VA. And I tried it. And every single time after I got them to, got to know them and showed them exactly what I wanted, there was some emergency that occurred. Personal emergencies, some family, something. Anyway, they weren't able to do the job anymore. And I was so frustrated. And that was when I found you. So as luck would have it, it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience, because one thing I noticed was that with my business, because I do so many different things, I'm hosting the show, I am an author, I coach, I speak, and do all sorts of different things. Everything was everywhere. I had to go to Calendly, I had to go to Pipedrive, I had to go to this place and that place. And I'm not really that tech savvy. So I would get super confused. And then you go on one and you're locked out of your password. And I was like, oh my God, my day just started and I'm freaking out already. So I'm glad I don't have those experiences anymore. Thank God.
It's funny. I forgot you were using Pipedrive. It's been so long now, it seems like. But what I first remember is the very first conversation we had. Can I tell your website story?
Yeah, go ahead.
That was just textbook. So you were actually I know it's painful, so sorry I didn't ask permission to bring up this story for you, but it does
take my gloves off and we're just going to be real.
No, so the website that you had before you and I met, you had paid way too much money for a very basic site. And then for any edit that you needed, it was $1,000 for anything to be done. It wasn't done in branding that fit you. I remember looking, it's actually my father has a financial website, and the branding was very parallel to his. It was the same colors and the same fonts. And I was just like, but you're not a financial company. So it's just very interesting. Nothing about it fit you, and we were way overpaying. And I was like, we can do all that for you and save you a lot of money going forward. Yeah.
The other thing too was, I'm a person who likes to have control over my business. And when I didn't have control over my website, I felt, I don't even know what the word is, but I felt a little trapped in some ways, because I ideally wanted to go in and be able to make some small changes. And what I love is now that the website is built on the CRM, I actually went in there and made some changes the other day. So I can make some small changes in the copy really, really easily. And if it's something complicated, I just have the team do it, because I could probably figure it out, but I don't want to get frustrated. So it's a nice option to have. But, it's funny because those are the technical details, which, are important, of course. But, I have to say, I want to really deep dive into a little more about your story, because you and I have had conversations about what it's like being a female entrepreneur, right? And, we tend to think it's not that much different, but it really is, because as a female entrepreneur, and I was in a very male dominated industry, and you are too, it's funny because we have to bring a different energy to our business. And that energy often affects our personal lives, and it affects a lot of our interactions. So I wanted you to talk about your take on that.
Yeah, it's always an interesting topic to me, because I was raised, I'm so blessed. I have the best parents I could ever ask for. I was raised with all the right just morals and just mindset, and just so many of the right upbringing. That was something that being a female was never you can do anything. You can do anything. It's like the feminine male versus female was never a part of the conversation for me growing up, early adulthood. And it wasn't until I started my own business and got more into that side of things, being a female founder, that, I was like, oh, I'm never going to give credence to that. That's just, I'm just going to ignore it, and it's, won't get in my way. And just over the years, it's really been astounding to me just to have a different perspective on how different those paths are. And, something that you and I were talking about earlier that I think is a big part of that is that there's so many opportunities that are a lot more natural for men to be brought into at a younger age. That wasn't my path. And it's funny because there's certain decisions that were made for me at a very young age, middle school, that impacted the rest of my life. So my brother, I want to preface this that I have an amazing brother. He's absolutely fantastic, brilliant, has an amazing life, and deserves every single bit of it. But we've had extremely different life paths. At age 5, he's 2 years younger than me. At age 5, we had a babysitter. I'll never forget this. My parents raised us with having spend, save, and invest plastic banks that we would put our quarters that we got for allowance in, and just his mindset for how he was allocating the different quarters into his plastic banks at age 5. We had a babysitter that goes, well, this kid's going to be in finance someday. He went on to Kelley School of Business, Pierre Weinberg, investment banking in New York, and he has had a very successful career. And it's funny because we went to the same grade school, but then the high school that he went to is one of the bigger feeder schools to Ivy Leagues. I think there's roughly a class size of around 50, maybe 30 kids per year go to Ivy League schools. So it's a it's extremely quality high school. But the grade school that we went to is the biggest feeder school for that high school. And I had a very heavy bullying class at that grade school. So I was like, I don't want to continue going to school with these people. I want to go somewhere else. And so I had to go to that high school, and that changed my whole life.
But I'm curious, why was your class more a heavy bullying class versus the others? Was there something that affected the dynamic, or just luck of the draw?
I guess luck of the draw, some extra really mean kids. But I was the shyest person in my whole grade school, so I didn't speak up for myself back then, and I didn't know how to, so I was the bully's favorite target. So I was like, I don't want to go to school with these kids anymore. And that decision changed the rest of my life. My brother went on to have a network of people that are all really wonderful people, but they're on average very well resourced. And so, in his 30s, he has a network of people who are very successful, who he can call on for lots of things. Not that, that's he's earned all of that. They've earned all. They're all wonderful, wonderful people. But it's just interesting, the different life paths. But because that's my brother, I've been able to see it all firsthand, just such that strong difference. But I didn't really, my brother had the most linear path of anyone that I've ever met. And mine was the polar opposite. So I joke with my parents, I'm like, well, you got one of each. My life path has been like this. So I didn't know.
It happens. I mean, even in the same family, right? You can have so many different variations. And I would say that I'm very similar to you. It's probably why you and I resonated. I mean, one of my siblings has had a very linear path, and mine has been all over the place, but it is what it is. I mean, I feel like we're probably meant to have a different journey for a specific reason. I don't know that sometimes I understand the reason, but it's okay. We're going to try to make sense of it. So the bullying, how did that, was that something that you still feel is affecting you throughout your life? Or do you feel like you learned something from that early on? I mean, how would you feel that experience has affected your life in the current situation?
Sure. So I wouldn't say that I'm at least have a conscious relationship between the bullying impact in my life. It wasn't something that I feel like I have any, crazy trauma or anything from, but I was afraid to speak up when I was a kid. And then in high school and college kind of went the other end of the spectrum. I remember people saying, gosh, you're so loud, stop talking. And it's like kind of anything in life has a pendulum swing. If you end up being one way too hard, then you end up swinging the other way until you find some equilibrium. So, it kind of took me until my mid-20s to figure out who I am, but I feel like that's normal. Most people have no idea who they are until their mid-20s, but Listen, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life.
I'm in my mid-50s and I'm still figuring out who I am. I feel like it's a lifelong journey. I think that you get out a little bit along the way, and you only know what you know at whatever age, right? And then another decade goes by, and I bet 10 years from now we'll have a conversation. You'll say, wow, I've discovered so much.
So many things. There's just, I want to, and that's the thing is, I want to learn everything. I love skill sets. I love learning. I love being better than I was yesterday. And so sometimes, when I was younger, it was hard to figure out there's not one thing for me that there is to do. So, I've solved that at this age because I've created something where everything is always different every day. So it's, I can continue to build. I'm not able to just wake up and do the same thing every day. That just doesn't work for me.
Right. So let me ask you, again, you have so many different skill sets. There are times where I actually think it's harder for people like that. For example, if you grow up and you're good at one thing, I feel like it's very easy to take a path and figure out what your career choice is. But on the contrary, if you are good at so many different things and you don't know how to put all those things together to create a job description in some ways, I feel like it made it a lot harder for me because I'm very much the same way. So, can you talk a little bit about your experience and how you figured out what or how to put all these pieces of that puzzle together to create the Rebecca that sits before us today?
Well, it's a constant journey of honing in on, what, and even just honing in on what is it for me to focus on now. So that was something that my original background is in holistic health. That was, my vocation area for a number of years. I used to lecture on holistic health. My technical background is in laser therapy. So anyway, a lot of history in that road. But it was through that journey in holistic health that I realized I had a natural acumen for business, that I would just see certain things that no one else seemed to. And I was in my early mid 20s at the time. And I was like, well, why don't we just do this? And there were just so many things. And I started to realize that I was seeing things that no one else did. And then I realized that holistic health providers as an average are really the worst business people. They're really just beautiful hearted people who just on average aren't the best at business. So I have a huge network of holistic health providers and it's tough. So because that was my network and I realized that was my skill set, I had a lot of people asking me for the same type of help over and over again. So, different sizes of business. I ended up restructuring departments for $17 million companies, did that a couple times, from solopreneur all the way to 17 million and, a handful of things in between. I saw the same issues. People needed the same things from me. And I was like, my brain is always, how can I expand on this? I'm never like a one-on-one kind of a person. I love helping people one-on-one, but to do that, time for money is it's exhausting and it's not scalable. And so I was like, my brain is always thinking, how can I build on that and make it more scalable? And so that was kind of, I guess, when the seeds of Business Done Better started to come together, where I was like, how can I take this and help so many more people with the same things that everybody seems to need?
And that's an entirely different skill set. I mean, it's one thing to be an entrepreneur, it's another thing to identify how to scale that business. And one thing I wish I had learned when I was creating my businesses is that you actually have to start with the scalability in mind. And I didn't. My first few businesses, I did not. Now I'm much smarter, but I did not know that.
Some people are happy having a smaller business. And that's why whenever I'm doing assessment calls and discovery calls with people, I'm always trying to understand, where is it that you want this to go? Because some people, they just want to, they want to reach a certain point where they're not stressed, but they're not super big. And they're happy with that. And that's all they want to do. And that's wonderful. And that's where they should be working towards. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of summarize me, I've realized that I love problem solving. That's really anything in holistic health, in business, one-on-one with people, just, outside of work-related things. I'm always problem solving. I love finding solutions to things. There's the flip side of that, where I've learned to, when I was doing restructure jobs for people, after I'd done it enough times, I realized to preface that I'm a bloodhound for anything that's not working. So if you want me to fix something, what's going to happen is you're essentially giving me your toy house, and I'm going to turn it upside down and shake the crap out of it. And anything that's not properly nailed to the floorboards is going to fall out. We're going to light it on fire, and then we're going to rebuild it much better. So if you're not okay with that, we can't move forward. So, and you can try to hide things from me all you want. It's funny because I see actually a consistent pace. Even I've done this so many times now. So it's like, the first, there's certain things that I can kind of pick up in the first, couple weeks, certain threshold that we usually get to around the first month. And then there's usually like some surprise things that come up around 3 months in. So there's a consistent pattern. 3 months in, it's all the stuff that people have hidden in the corner, in the closets, collecting cobwebs. They don't want anyone to see that it's that much of a mess. And it's like, oh, that's why things are in the place that they are.
Sounds like what happens in relationships. It's that 3-month mark that all the things that are sitting in the closet show up.
So yeah, and that's why I realized I was not meant to work for other people, because a lot of people want to just keep things under the rug. They're like, I'm just going to ignore it. But people do that in their personal life too, personal life and business. If they're like, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist and it's all fine. And it's like, the meme with the dog with the fire in the background. It's like, everything is fine. Everything is fine. Like, can we fix it? Like, I can help. We can fix this. It doesn't have to be this way.
I love your analogy though about turning the house upside down, shaking it up, lighting it on fire. Because I have to tell you, I use that analogy in a different way. I say that I did that with my life because it wasn't, it looked fabulous, like the house looked great on the outside and looked really awesome. But on the inside, it wasn't so awesome. And that was when I was like, let me shake this upside down and let me just, let me just light my whole life on fire, change it all up and rebuild the whole damn thing.
You have to do that sometimes. That there's, what's the saying? If you want to do something that you've never, if you want to reach a goal that you've never reached, you must do things that you've never done. So, or something like that. It's like if you want a drastic change, you want a drastic different life, you sometimes have to do drastically different things in order to achieve that. So you can't just be, stuck in a corner and just stay there, or you're never gonna get what you want.
What do you think led to your appetite to be able to do these drastic things? Because, one thing is that I'm always trying to show people in my coaching practices when they're going from a place of fear to the place of freedom about, really having that capacity to be uncomfortable and do things with just moments of courage. So what would you say is your, secret formula? Or is this just the way you've always been?
That's a funny question. And it's also funny that you use the word capacity, because that was a word that clicked for me in this past year, is that I've realized that a lot of things in business and how this, like the light bulb that happened to me was actually in my personal life, like what I'm looking for in a partner, that I'm really attracted to people who have the biggest amount of capacity. That's, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to have a really intense amount of capacity in order to sustain the highs and lows that come with that. It is absolutely inevitable if you're starting your own business that you're going to go through some really intense stuff. And if you aren't really solid enough in your why and you have enough capacity to be able to handle anything that gets thrown your way, you're not going to make it. Like, I've had conversations with people that are like, I want to start a business. And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? They're like, I don't know. I just want financial freedom and I just want to have my own business. And I'm like, you're not going to make it. Like, I'm just, not to be mean, but like, that's just not enough. Like, why I'm here is what I'm doing now, I cannot fathom doing anything else with my life except for what I am up to right now. This is at the core of my soul, with every fiber of my being. It is everything that I do is so that I can give back to the greatest extent possible. And this is the most impactful way that I know how to make a difference for people. And that's my why. And I can't, like, that means that no matter what happens, I'm here. I'm doing it.
The first thing I want to say is, number one, I think that you giving it to people straight like that is awesome, because right now we live in a world where everybody is tiptoeing around everything. Like,
Yeah.
you can't say what you really, every kid on the playground deserves a first place. Guys, I'm like, this is ridiculous.
No.
And I prefer honesty. I always tell people, I prefer the ugly truth to a whole bunch of pretty lies. I would so much rather that. And I wish more people were like that. So for you to say that to somebody is great. They might not work with you. That's fine. But at least you've got the right clients, number one. And that's amazing. And number two, it's amazing that with what you do, you're actually being able to help so many other businesses thrive. Like, frankly, I don't know what I'd do without you guys. I mean, I have had to create so many different things and, assets and not only my website, different logos, this, that, the other thing. And, I'm reasonably tech savvy, but it's not my perfect wheelhouse. So just to have that resource for me, for somebody to go to, helps. So now you're helping people like me who don't have all of these other skill sets have access to the skill sets, which is fabulous. And I love that. So it's amazing.
Yeah. And that's, so there's so many business service providers, especially in marketing and websites. I feel like those are the most common, where there are some people who are real good at sales and marketing and they don't fully deliver. It's so prevalent. Not to say that people who don't have good sales and marketing don't deliver. That's not the case, but it's hard to kind of sift through who's actually going to give you what it is that you need for sometimes people are spending their last dollars that they have, and they need to make sure that they're getting what they need for that expense. So that's something that I wanted to make sure that with every single thing that we're doing with Business Done Better, that people are really getting what it is that they need most. So that's always really, really important to me, to have that full integrity throughout every different of the business, the experience. I've told people, I've had discovery calls with people where I'm like, this is not the right fit for you. I go, you need to do certain things in your business before this is the right move. Like you need to be doing certain things before this is the right thing to spend your money on.
And that is a real blessing, because I wish people would have told me that. And, sometimes, people aren't really that honest. One of the things I wanted to ask you too about was, we had originally started talking about that, but then we got on another topic. But, the masculine and feminine roles. Let's talk a little bit more about that from your viewpoints of how this has created a framework for your life and business, personal life, advantages, disadvantages, so I want to hear your take on that.
Yeah, so masculine and feminine energy in general is always a topic that I love talking about, where we all have masculine and feminine energy, and those show up in different areas of our day, of our life. Different activities that we're doing it's a certain type of energy that shows up when you're running a business, when you're in charge, when you're building things. That's a very masculine energy. So when you're running a business as a female, it drives you a lot deeper onto the masculine side. And it can sometimes be hard to balance, the feminine softness, because the feminine is receiving. The masculine energy is going out and pursuing things. And then the feminine energy is receiving things. So they're very opposite energies. So, it's a tough balance to be, running a business and actively going after things, especially when you're pursuing sales and you're out there with lead generation and stuff like that. Those are all masculine energies, but that's, as a female, it can be kind of a tough thing to balance. But yeah, and then there's so many other tangents just as a female founder and all the different things that you get to navigate. There's definitely a lot behind that door as well.
Well, and then, even just looking for funding, as a startup, it can really be challenging. I mean, I've had businesses that, were, I've self-funded, and then I've had a business where it was a startup and I was looking for funding. And it was really interesting to me how different it was for me compared to these stories I was hearing from other founders. And it was shocking, actually. And we don't realize this because, again, we see ourselves as these business women and entrepreneurs. But in many places, we're still viewed as women. And I really think the world is starting to change with that, but we're not quite where we need to be. So what are your thoughts or your experiences? What have those been like?
Sure. Well, we're raising money right now for our software company, Referly, and that's definitely been a huge learning curve and experience. It's my first raise. And it's funny because, again, like there's so many traditional routes that men are more often run through naturally, organically in life, where as a female, because of my life path and being a female contributed to that, I haven't been organically introduced to the right circles. I have a beautiful network of amazing human beings with huge hearts who are just really quality people. But I didn't previously have a very well-resourced network. I'm just starting to build that for the very first time. And it takes a long time. It's people who have a lot of resources. They're very guarded for obvious reasons. Anytime you have a lot of something, it doesn't have to be, financial resources. If you have a lot of something, everyone has a piece of it. So you should be guarded to a certain extent, but it takes time to kind of break into those kinds of circles that can help open the right doors for you. And I didn't have that previously. And I still don't have a lot of it, but I'm starting to for the very first time. And it's funny because at this point, I've gone through the learning curve of all the things that you need for a raise. We're raising on safes. I understand valuation cap. We're raising on YC's dual safe with a 7 mil val cap and a 20% discount. We have term sheet, like our performa, like we have all those things, and I love learning those kinds of things. They're fun for me. But it's I'd never had a mentor in business until a couple months ago. Literally until 2 months ago, I went through Founder Institute's initial accelerator, and Stephen Morley is one of the top mentors in FI. And I'm really blessed that he's been actually mentoring me he's officially on our advisory board, and he's been just, I get value out of every single conversation that we have. I'm so honored that he's actually officially mentoring. It's literally the first time I've had a real mentor in business ever.
That's so important. And you know what? And you can change that, because I have a feeling you'll be mentoring other women, or, just entrepreneurs.
There's so many things, and that's why, like, I love shortcutting things for people. It's like I tell people you shouldn't cut corners, but you can run faster. So there's so many things that if that's why, we'll get to the Done Better initiative, but with the Done Better initiative, it's all about pathways and incentives. It's like if people had the right pathways and incentives, then they could navigate things better. But it's so hard to find out what that looks like in so many different areas. But especially running a business is hard enough, but doing it with, no resources, no network. And as a female founder, we already have multiple strikes against you. I mean, it's a rough ride. That's why I spent a couple months out in San Diego last year, because just raising capital, I realized was a lot easier on the West Coast than in South Florida. I love South Florida, but West Coast has some certain things that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's better as a female founder. It
right,
is.
It definitely is. And just for the people who are watching, this is kind of a funny anecdote, because literally when you and I first met, I was in South Florida, you were in San Diego. Then we actually physically met in person in San Diego. Then you went back to Florida and I moved to San Diego. Just funny how that all turned out. But
Yeah.
so getting back to one of the things I want to know about, so one of the things that I feel is so prevalent with this masculine, feminine energy that we were talking about is there is this masculine energy that we bring forth as female entrepreneurs. And then it's real hard to kind of really do that receiving. So I will say that I know this time around in this business, I'm running things differently, and I'm actually managing my business differently, but it's also a different kind of business. So I will say that.
For you.
One thing that is really hard, I think, for women is when you're a younger entrepreneur. I think that it really, and I mean, some of these things still apply to me, even as an older one, but I feel like there's a real big price to pay. And that big price tends to be putting off our families. I got lucky when I was in residency. I had this amazing attending surgeon who literally told me, he was a family guy. So he one day pulls me aside, and these days I think this would be completely frowned upon. It's getting very personal. But he was like, "So, you've been married." He's like, "Kalpana, you've been married for a couple of years. Like, when you're thinking about having kids, like totally a no-go zone right now." But back then I wasn't offended. I was like, I mean, I want to have kids, but I don't know when, was what I told him. And he says to me, he said, "You know what? Now's the time you should do it." He goes, "Because I'll tell you why." He goes, "We have 7 other residents. If you go out on maternity leave, you got 7 people to cover you." And then he said, "You should probably do it. If it's something you want to do it. I'll support you, and I'll make everybody else support you." It was almost like he gave me the green light. Well, guess what? I actually wound up having 2 children during residency. I graduated a little later. That was fine. But as the way my life played out, I had thyroid cancer immediately after I started my practice. I don't know if I would have had my children. So I'm forever grateful to him for telling me that, because then I also went into my own practice where I didn't have any coverage, and who knows how long it would have taken me. So on that note, I want to hear from you, like, how has that played a role in your life? Balancing these masculine and feminine roles, and, all of the things that women face.
Yeah, I'm 34, and it's something that my mom had me a bit later in life, and she didn't meet my father until she was 30. Trying to think right now. She had me when she was 37 and 39 was when she had my brother and I. And so that's so when I was a teenager, she was going through menopause while I was going through puberty. So I think it was at that moment where I was like, I don't want to be an old mom. I want to have kids when I'm younger. But that's not how it worked out. I've been very blessed, and I've had, I'd say all but one of my relationships have actually been extremely healthy. So I've been very blessed in that department. I think that's largely in part because I have an amazing relationship with my father that always, helps set the tone right when you're growing up. So I had the right role model to just look for in life. And I've met a handful, 95% at 96, 97, 98, 99. Like I've really, the last relationship I had, what didn't even find a single flaw. It just wasn't the right timing on his end. So it's long story short. And, but I still haven't met the right guy. And it's tough because at this point in my life, I feel like I'm kind of one year away from having to choose having kids or pursuing my career. And I've always wanted both. I don't want to give up one. I really, really, really want both, like more than anything in the world. But my business, I have control over. Kids, I can adopt, I can freeze my eggs, but meeting the right person in life, there's only so much that's in your control. So I hope that the universe has that in store for me. But it's definitely something that's on my mind a lot, because I've been doing some future paced, stuff with the performance, with my businesses. And, for Referrally, that has actual unicorn potential. But to actually make it a unicorn, it's, this $1 billion valuation without going public. I think we can do that in 5 years, which is like really impressive. It actually has the potential, but I got to drive it hard. And that's 5 years from now-ish. I'm going to have kids somewhere in the middle of that. And that's, I definitely can't do that and have kids without a husband. There's just no way you can't run that hard and you can't have a unicorn and be a single mom. I mean, maybe you can. It's just real, definitely not without like a lot of financial, backing.
It is really, really difficult. And, and I hear what you're saying, because I think it's really a hard decision to make. And do you feel like it's harder for women who are entrepreneurs and in their own businesses to meet somebody? Or do you feel like it's the same?
Yes and no. I feel like it depends on what kind of a partner somebody is looking for. For me, I mean, you and I have had these conversations where I've had people who meet me and they know I'm very masculine wired. I'm, very alpha in how I show up in a lot of areas in life, because I've had to be. And so like, I've had people who don't know me very well, and they're like, do you want a beta man? And I'm like, no. I need a man who is so masculine, in a healthy way, that it makes me feel safe to be in my feminine.
And it's funny because there's a lot of talk about this now. I've seen it a lot in social media. And I mean, to me, I find this to be a fascinating concept, because I have been overly masculinized in my masculine energy for a good majority of my life. And I didn't understand why. But now I do, because now I'm hearing all these things and I'm like, oh, it's because I could never really just absorb the feminine role. And really, that's what I also desire. I'll be in the masculine zone at work when it's time, but with what I'm doing now, I can actually embody my feminine roles much more, which I feel makes me feel more in balance. And, out of the mouths of babes, my kids have even told me, you're way better and more nurturing now than you ever were. I'm like, gee, thanks guys, but I was busy.
Because you weren't able to. You weren't able to before. When you feel that you have to carry when you don't trust somebody else to carry the masculine traits are survival mode. When you have to, carry those traits in order to move forward in life, unless there's someone else that you feel safe to hand that off to, you have to show up that way.
And it's funny because I don't know that it wasn't that I didn't feel safe. I just was such a control freak that I just had to have it all done in the way I wanted because I was a control freak. So
Fair
I'll
enough.
be honest. I mean, there was a little bit of, maybe I didn't want to let it go because I was a control freak. I don't know. I'm not really sure in that dynamic. But I would say that for me, I feel that it can be threatening sometimes to be in a relationship if they see these aspects of you. It really changes and shifts the dynamic. So what I think really should be happening is that we need to not cling to those old roles and dynamics that have been set forth like in 1950, and let's reinvent the roles, because a relationship doesn't have to be traditional. It can be whatever we want to make it. And I think so many of us are stuck in an old paradigm of what a relationship should be. So it needs to change. A lot of things need to change.
Well, it's so funny because the right partnership, everyone shows up differently in different aspects of their life, whether it's the masculine and the feminine that shows up. And the right partnership is just the right blend of that masculine and feminine energy. I'm actually surrounded by really, really, really healthy relationships. My parents, my brother and his wife are actually hands down my favorite relationship. They're the most soulmate of soulmates I've ever seen in my entire life. Their names are Adam and Abigail for starters, but just they're just absolute perfection. My parents are absolutely incredible, and the right blend of partnership. And both of my dad's brothers, both of them have just absolutely incredible marriages, and even my father's parents. He has anyway, like literally. There's a whole family of really healthy marriages, which is so uncommon. So I'm extremely blessed, so blessed that I've had so many different variations of how that shows up. And it's funny because every right relationship is a different blend of that masculine and feminine. There was something, oh, maybe I shouldn't say this on air, but there was just something with my brother and his wife that like my family and I were talking about the other day, that like there was something that we thought was a her thing, but we realized it was my brother, and vice versa. But it's like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like they're both, actually it was like decorating the house. Like my brother actually was like, is really good at putting the house together. He's very masculine, but he's really good at that. But Abigail is extremely feminine, but it's like, it's funny because it shows up in different ways with each partnership, but the right one is the perfect blend.
Well, the
I
right
want to call
Well, I think the
that's
right partnership allows that transformation. So maybe your brother now in this relationship feels safe to show his feminine aspects. And again, like who comes up with this? Like men can have feminine, these are just designations that society has assigned. We all embody masculine and feminine, and it's an integrated part of us. And for us to be truly whole and healthy human beings, we have to embody both the masculine and feminine. Anytime it's out of balance, it's a problem. And that's what I think really needs to shift in society, that we assign these roles as if one's good and one's bad. No, we
no.
all should be expressing all of those traits as long as they're authentic to us. And you know what? If you have a relationship where you take those gloves off and you can shed that ego and show up authentically, that's really, at the end of the day, what we're all looking for. Authenticity in relationships, business relationships. I think that if we lead with that, everything is going to be better, what we put out into the world from that one basic fundamental premise.
I agree. It's all about transparency, honesty, vulnerability, just being rooted in who you are fully. So that's something that too often it starts with being honest with yourself. And I think that's the first step where people usually go wrong, is they're usually lying to themselves, and therefore they're not fully showing up authentically with others because they're afraid to be themselves to themselves. So that's the piece that I wish that we could.
I've done that for many, many years of my life.
we all have to some degree. And I think that that's, for whatever reason, I don't know how to be anything but very transparent and vulnerable. I don't know how to do filters very well. It's just not in my nature. It's, sometimes to a fault. I say that. I don't know how to lie to save my life.
I would say I'm envious of people who found that authenticity very early in their lives and can express it, embrace it. I mean, because I'll tell you, when I was your age, I was none of those things. I was very much in my ego. I was very much of a, because I can't say the other word, or maybe I can, but I was a jerk. I mean, I look back at who I was and I was like, I didn't even like me. So no wonder, I didn't feel like I had these great relationships. And it's almost funny because when you're in that state, you put on these masks of the ego and you're hiding yourself. And then you wonder why nobody likes you. But the fact is, they can't like you because they don't know who you really are. And now I find that when I show up authentically, it's the exact opposite. People actually like me because I'm real. Funny how it's like, to me, that was like such a revelation. I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
I can only have real things in my life. It's funny because I grew up in St. Louis and it just was never a fit for me. I never found my circle there. I spent 20 years in the Midwest, and I left with one friend. We're she and I have been friends for I think it's 20 years now, but just that one person. I've been in South Florida for 13 years. I have more beautiful people in my life than I can even count. I have 4 people that I would truly call best friends, who are absolute family to me, who I've known from, I guess 4 to 20 years and multiple different levels in between. But it's all because I am real to myself and I show up that way to others. And I don't, if me showing up unapologetically myself, if that doesn't work with somebody, then I just know they're not for me. And that goes in my personal life and in business. I've had people, tell me I need to be a certain way in business. And, I'm just like, look, I am always trying to help people and be the best way that I can and be of service. I do everything I can to really just be authentic and how can I help somebody the most? And if that doesn't work for somebody, or like, cause some people they say they want help, but they actually don't. And I'm like, look, I can help you if you want help. I'm here. And I don't know, I didn't know how to do sales and marketing. I'm just learning how to do sales and marketing for the first time, which I also realized is just like so critical to a business. If you can't market what it is that you do, you won't go very far. So, it's like I can solve problems all day long, but if I can't market how well I solve problems, nobody knows.
And it is so hard. Marketing to me has always been this enigma of something that's very difficult to understand. I mean, I feel like I understand a lot of it much better, but I think right now I feel like my job is to find out people who know how to do it and do it right. And that's where now I'm using intuition to guide me in these decisions, where it used to be only logic that guided me. And often it was wrong. Now I only use intuition about who to work with, what places, what dynamics are good for me, which ones are not good for me. And 100% of the time I'm right. And I also have a rule. I do not do business with people I don't like. If I don't think I can be friendly with them, I don't want to do business with them. I'm sorry. So inevitably, most of my business acquaintances wind up being friends. But remember that old adage, don't mix business with pleasure? I'm like, oh, I always mix business with pleasure.
I think that's part of the paradigm shift. So we were talking about the paradigm shift of relationships, where, it's not about the traditional masculine and feminine, like man and woman relationships anymore. It's whatever serves you best with the right blend of masculine and feminine. That's what's best for you. And then in business, it's, why would you not do, I don't know how to do that either. Like I can't do, but it's funny because that's actually like kind of in my karma. I am karmically not allowed apparently to do business with anybody that's not fully in integrity. It just doesn't work out 100% of the time. It's funny that way. I
want to know karmically. What do you mean karmically? Like, is there a lightning bolt that shoots out of the sky? I mean, what happens?
So it's funny because I like Wonder Woman is a constant theme in my life. This, stems from years ago. It's, story me I'll tell another time, but it's the pillars of Wonder Woman is kind of at the core essence of who I am. And like, there's all the pillars that people normally understand about that entity, that energy. But the second Wonder Woman movie, there's the opening scene where little Diana is running a gauntlet and she like gets knocked off her horse and she takes a shortcut and then she gets back on her horse and she like gets back to the Coliseum and she's about to win. And then her mentor pulls the spear out of her hand. She's like, what are you doing? I was going to win. She's like, no, Diana, like you will achieve more greatness than anybody else, but you can't take any shortcuts, something like that. And I was like had tears. Had such a visceral reaction to that. It was like, I'm not allowed to even like look to the side, like off my like integrity path. I'm not allowed to work with anybody that's out of integrity. Anybody who's not showing up fully authentically, it does not work out. That's just how my life is.
I'm glad I made the cut. Thank God. But I haven't.
Because it allows me to connect with the real people, like the people who are in my life in personal and business are just the most incredible people that we have such a depth of connection with, that it's funny to me how many other people have never even experienced that. And I literally have that everywhere in my life. Anybody that I do things with personally and in business show up that way.
So I have a question for the audience here from Dr. Sean. So are there any unique benefits of a female in business? So I'm going to pose that question to you.
Let's see. So I love a female running a business because are specifically masculine wired female, so that's, you and I both in this conversation and most females that I'm close with, honestly, because we have an interesting balance of being able to run things, but being able to be very nurturing at the same time. So I know I'm very in tune with everything that's going on with every person on my team. I always know when something is a little bit off. All of my team feels very comfortable sharing certain things with me, which allows us to navigate us as a team in a very unique way that I think is not very common. I mean, my whole team is like, wow, this is, not the normal work experience, but it's incredible. And it's what business and a team should be. And it's because it has that right combination. Like there's so many people who just business owners and just businesses in general, where they want to just have the business stuff in business and you leave your personal stuff at the door. You come here, you clock in, you do your stuff, you leave, your personal life stays out there. And I'm like, we're human, it's like, I've been through so much in my life. There's really not much I haven't been through personally. So I understand when somebody is going through something really tough. Like I've had some of my team going through some really serious stuff. And because that was the precedent that I was able to set, we were able to work together to navigate that. And now I have a team, I have hourly staff who they show up like no other hourly staff. I mean, I've had answered things at 2 a.m. I'm like, why are you awake right now? Go to bed. Stop doing work right now. What hourly employee has that kind of an experience where they would just do absolutely anything? They're so involved and just passionate about everything that we do, my entire team, because they know that I would do anything for them and they would do anything for me. That's how business should be.
I agree. And, to illustrate that point, when I was in my surgical practice in the beginning, I thought that you had to be militant. And that was how I ran things. And it was very transactional, it was very militant. And, that was what I believed was right. Well, over the years, I just found that because those employees were there a lot longer, and of course, they were going through some trials and tribulations, as was I, I started to change and shift, and it really impacted in a very positive way my business. Because again, if I would never call them at weird hours, but if something was really an issue, I would, and guess what? They would answer. That tells you a lot. When you call an employee off business hours, and if they're going to answer the phone, they really care about you and they really respect you, and they know you wouldn't call if it was something silly. And then case in point, those same employees, when I was going through my divorce and I was really struggling, well, let me tell you, they asked me how I was, really watched after me, because I was going through some hard stuff. So it could be a beautiful dynamic within a business when you care about people, because you're right, we are humans. We're all human beings in a business relationship together, maybe primarily, but at the end of the day, we are one, we are united, and we're sharing this earth together. And I think once you look at it that way, it changes the dynamic so greatly. And again, another paradigm that needs to shift.
That's really what we're embodying with Business Done Better. It's about how do we show up best, in every single aspect of life, living in society. It's, how can we show up best internally as a team? how can we show up best to our clients? How can we empower our clients to show up best in the community? It's very, multifaceted.
One of the things I wanted to make sure we have time for, because God, I could talk to you for hours, and like it's almost to the end of our time, and I had a feeling it would go quick. I want to go over this. I'm going to actually put this back. I'll put this up on the screen and show this. This. Oh, I guess I got to make it bigger. I have to take myself off and then make this. Well, I don't know how to make it bigger. Well, that's a good question. How about you just talk about it? Sorry, technical. I was like, well, there's a computer savvy part that doesn't work. I'm like, well, I don't know how to make it.
This was the first one of the series, so there's a tech learning curve. Including, we normally have a beautiful background that my team has done, but we couldn't figure out how to put that on the screen right now. So my impromptu, gloves off, transparent. I'm moving, so this is the background for the day.
It's real.
Gorgeous graphic virtual background that my team did that people normally compliment me on all the time. That's not able to show up today.
Because I have one too that people compliment me.
Because we do over 100 at this point. We've done so many. We have a whole library for our clients.
Well, why don't you tell us about what you've got for the people watching, and how they can find you and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to let you have the stage, and you can talk about that, and I'll come back when you're done.
Sure. Yeah, so we have a special going on right now where on the Business Done Better side, our flagship service is called Business in a Box, where we realize that all small business owners and solopreneurs, they always need the same things. They need admin support, social media management, websites, website management, graphics, and bookkeeping. So we are able to offer all of those in a very fluid, flexible service called Business in a Box, where business owners can take advantage of all of those, any combination of those services, where everything is just service hours. So you buy a box plan, and whatever it is, if you want to just start with admin support, then you realize you want to do social media management in the middle of your box plan, no problem. You start with social media, you realize you want us to build your website, also no problem. If you just want a couple graphics in the middle of your box plan, still no problem. So it's a very flexible, fluid service where, so our special that we have going on right now is for our 35-hour-a-week box at the annual billing cycle. So for business owners who, usually like a 2 to 5 person team, this is where it's the most common of a fit for who, they're spending a lot of money on payroll. We've had where we've been able to replace like a marketing manager, social or CRM manager, office manager kind of a position where we had one person who's paying $65,000 for that one person, and we were able to replace everything that person was doing and more for significantly less. So saving about 20 grand for that example. Or we had another client who they have somebody who they pay 40 hours a week to do a bunch of admin work, but they're not really clear on everything that she's doing. It's an in-house US hire, and they're not getting that much out of it. And so I didn't even realize this is a CRM client of ours, but they were very frustrated with a few things. So we were able to support them on that and save them tons of money for never having to have to interview or list things on Indeed or vet, hire, onboard. Then you go through that whole process, and then you realize they're not a good fit, and you have to fire them and do the whole process all over again. It's very draining. So we take that entire process off of somebody's hands, where you have one dedicated account manager, and then you have access to our entire team, but you only have to deal with one person, but you have a full team of skill sets to fulfill on anything that you need. So it's a very fluid service that can really save business owners a lot of money.
Well, I can say firsthand, not only have I used the Business in a Box, but the CRM, all of it has been life-changing for me. And, part of my goal is to get out there for people to have better resources so that their life is simplified and everything. This has been just such a fascinating conversation. I knew it was going to be. I really am just honored that you were able to be so vulnerable and honest, take off your gloves, show up, as your real self, which, I love our conversations, and I knew this one would be fantastic. I'm excited because next week we're going to have Jeremy from Coaching Done Better on. And so I'm excited about that. And we'll talk a little bit about how you guys work together and all that, but it's exciting stuff. So have a fabulous rest of the evening. And thank you so much for joining me on Gloves Off.
How to find me is businessdonebetter.co/Rebecca. So that's how you can see all of everything else that we're up to, current specials, how to reach me directly, businessdonebetter.co/Rebecca.
Yes. Get some calls booked. And I love the intake calls too, because they're very, very thorough. So again, thanks so much for being a guest on the show, and have a fabulous evening.
You say you're fine, but I can see right through. You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. No, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lion.